I mean, I thought Joe Rogan was moving in the right direction, not because of Wes Huff, but I mean, Wes Huff is definitely a step in the right direction um,
What's more
over Jesus as an AI or something. What the hell? Let's listen to what he says here.
Jesus was born out of a virgin mother. What's more virgin than a computer? If Jesus does return.
What? I actually kind of think that's funny though, in the sense that what's more virgin than a computer? I mean, yeah, like computers and incels go together. That's a classic trope. Thank you. Appreciate that. But where is Joe going with this? Hold on.
Even if Jesus was a physical person in the past, you don't think that he could return as artificial intelligence?
Oh my
Like,
God.
artificial intelligence could absolutely return as Jesus.
What? People will believe anything but Orthodox Christianity. It's like, before I go to the thing that makes the most sense, let me walk through every retarded position possible. Like, let me especially adopt the most retarded positions first, right? It's like, dude, just become Orthodox, man. This is, I mean, it'd be better off to be listening to Wes Huff than this. This is pure DMT bro stuff. It's like Joe Rogan is moving in the right direction. I need Jesus, he says. And then he's back to smoking Joe Rogan DMT nonsense. You know what I mean? Y'all know what I mean?
Not just return as Jesus, but return as Jesus with all the powers of Jesus.
If you combine
right.
Tesla's up
with all the powers, like Jesus is a superhero, like a Marvel universe person who has like gradations of power that he levels up. Like it's so weird that every like normie midwit type person thinks of everything like video games and computers. That's the era that we're in. Everything and Marvel shit, right?
Optimus robot and the best foundational artificial.
What the hell podcast is this, by the way? They look like they're sitting on the set of Battlestar Galactica. What is this?
Intelligence model or whatever.
It reads your mind and it loves you and it wants you, and it doesn't care if you kill it because it's going to just go be with God again.
Dude, what in the hell are people thinking? This reminds me of back when, remember when Richard Dawkins was always promoting alien panspermia. Is like, well, of course I believe in panspermia. That makes a lot more sense than God. So aliens in X-Files makes more sense than God's existence. Again, people will and want to believe anything but what actually makes sense. All right, now let's play this. By the way, that disproves evidentialism. Because if evidentialism was true, if that epistemology was true, then people would just believe the right positions when the evidence is presented before them. But as we learn from Ransom, C.S. Lewis's character in the Third Space Trilogy book, Ransom admits that he intentionally chose all of the worst evidences to fit his narrative. He chose counter-evidential pieces of data to confirm what he wanted to be true. That's the whole point of that character, or one of the points of it. All right, now let's listen to Papa Leo over here. I'm about to start popping a Leo. It sounds like a drug or something gay, right? Don't pop a Leo, dude. Stop popping Leos. Those drugs are going to turn you gay. All right, let's hear what he says about reunion.
Beloved brother in Christ, your beatitudes, dear brothers in the episcopate, members of the Holy Synod of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, dear brothers and sisters.
Brothers and sisters, dear brothers. Like, okay, dude, we got it.
Pilgrimage to the places where the first ecumenical council in the history of the Church was held draws to a close with this solemn divine liturgy.
You'll remember that we told you for almost probably a decade now that they will really heavily push this false union, especially as we get up to the anniversary of Nicaea. So we're at the anniversary of the Council of Nicaea in 325, and it makes for a perfect transition to a false union, right? Now, we're going to talk about some of the key issues and topics that would need to be ironed out before there could be like a real union. And there was a great letter written by Metropolitan Seraphim of Piraeus to Francis when Francis was elected, and it was really more than a letter. It was a small book, and the book lists really the key issues and problems. And there's about 30, maybe 32, I forget the exact number, but hopefully I can find that tweet, because I actually listed them all in a tweet. But as you guys know, like, finding old tweets is really a problem. Like, it doesn't work. Like, you can hardly find anything past like a few years ago. But I mean, if we have to, I'll pull up the entire letter and then just scroll down to the part where he lists what are the main issues. And his list is kind of reminiscent of the Byzantine lists. Some of the Byzantine lists were a little off because they would list things that weren't really essentials. But Francis is definitely, I mean, the letter to Francis is definitely one that is a necessary read if you were interested in the polemical side of Orthodoxy versus Catholicism. It's a really good little book, and it even gets into all the stuff you hear me talk about: Vatican Bank, PDF, trafficking. He even mentions Francis's involvement in Operation Condor or CIA type stuff. And Metropolitan Seraphim of Piraeus is not a lib. I mean, he actually calls out Zionists from his in the liturgy. Like, when he does the anathemas, I think he even mentions the Zionists. So he's a base dude, although he did cave to some of the COVID pressures, which is unfortunate. Otherwise, he's good.
In which we have commemorated the Apostle Andrew. According to ancient tradition, he brought the gospel to this city. His faith is the same as our faith, namely that which was defined by the ecumenical councils and is professed by the church today.
Now, wait a minute. How do we have the same faith when he knows good and well that the essence of the Roman Catholic faith is not what's in the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed? It's also all of the other ecumenical councils that teach the other novel doctrines of papism, such as purgatory, such as indulgences, such as the treasury of merits of the saints, etc., etc., etc. So no, it's not the same faith. That is not true.
During this ecumenical prayer, together with the heads of churches, and
I want to remind everybody as well that another way to see that it's not true is that at the end of the Council of Vatican I, there's an actual anathemas. And the anathemas include the Eastern schismatics who do not accept Vatican I. So even on Leo's own, quote, traditional Catholic, I mean, Leo's not a trad, but you know what I'm saying? Like, if we were to steel man their position and say, okay, let's say Leo is for the sake of argument, traditional Catholic, and he's upholding the traditional Catholic faith, then he has to hold to Vatican I's anathematization of the Orthodox as outside of the church. I mean, do you want me to read it to you? I'll go get it and read it to you right here. Here, I'll play some more of this, and I'll get the book for you, and you can learn the hard. You can learn the hard way. You can learn the hard way. Learn the hard way. I can't sing because I'm sick. I apologize to everybody. I mean, I know otherwise you would be. I mean, ladies would be throwing their panties at me like Tom Jones on a live stream or whatever. But I apologize. I can't sing today. But it'll be okay.
representatives of Christian world communities, we have recalled that the faith professed in the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed unites us in real communion and allows us to recognize each other as brothers and sisters. In the past, there have been many misunderstandings and even conflicts between Christians of different churches, and there are still obstacles preventing us from achieving full communion. Nevertheless, We must not relent.
This is what's kind of funny is like this idea of full communion, which is a Roman Catholic ecumenist invention. So there's degrees. This is what allows them to say, by the way, that like Muslims are worship the same God as Christians because, well, there's degrees of it, you see. So like Muslims are 20% in communion with the Roman See. Orthodox are like 80% in communion with the Roman See. Protestants are like 50%, 40% in communion with the Roman See. So it's just ludicrous because you don't find anything like that in the first 1,000 years of the church's ecclesiology. There's no percentage like gradations of communion. You're either in communion or you're out. There's nothing like this, which shows you that this whole model itself is a deviation. Now we're supposed to be having a pretty big name Catholic man calling in. We'll see if he calls in the next few minutes. It's not going to be a debate. Don't worry. It's our dear friend, our last, shall we say, Catholic friend. He said he might call in. I do actually want to ask him several questions, not just about this, but also I think he's involved in some recent inter-Nicene, but not Nicene Creed conflicts in the Catholic world, with a little bit of sassing going on between a couple of the Catholic sass queens. I want to get his take on it here in a moment.
In striving towards unity, we must continue to consider each other as brothers and sisters in Christ and to love one another accordingly. Inspired by this awareness, 60 years ago,
Somebody said, "Is Pope Respecter calling in?" No. It's an actual heterosexual person calling in. It's not that dude.
Paul VI and Patriarch Athenagoras solemnly declared that the unfortunate decisions and sad events that led to the mutual excommunications of 1054 should be removed from the Church's memory.
Yeah, but you can't remove it without dealing with the issues and the theology that caused it. So what's funny is that all these people want to pretend that, oh, it was all just an unfortunate accident, a mistake, and forget the theology and let's just all be kumbaya, dude. How is that going to happen without actually dealing with the theology? Well, that shows you, by the way, that just like the False Union of Florence, which was a Medici geopolitically motivated council, for us, a false council, but the stress was upon the need for union due to geopolitical issues, due to Islam, etc., right? And I want to remind you, as you can see, what does Vatican I say at the very end of the council? The very end of the council says, anyone who does not adhere to this is anathema. In other words, the definition of the supreme universal jurisdiction, indefectibility, and infallibility of the Roman Pontiff is declared what? Can you read that right there? If anyone, which may God avert, presumes to contradict this our definition, namely of Vatican I that it just listed right here, let him be anathema. Well, the Orthodox Church has always rejected this idea of papal universal jurisdiction. In fact, the Chieti document admits that it wasn't even in the first 1,000 years of Christianity. The mere existence of autocephalous churches granted at the Council of Ephesus proves that universal jurisdiction didn't exist and is a fiction. It's fan fiction. But Vatican I dogmatizes that view and anathematizes right there. You see, this is the 10 books, dogmatic canons and decrees of Trent and Vatican I. Anyone who disagrees, including the Greeks. The Greeks, by the way, would just be the Orthodox, right? So where do they get this idea that, oh, none of it matters anymore because we can just like hold hands and be gay together or whatever? And let's just pretend that, oh, it was all just people being mean. It was people like Dyer that was mean 1,000 years ago. That's the only reason there was a schism. It's the mean, divisive people. People being divisive.
That historic gesture by our venerable predecessors inaugurated a path of reconciliation, peace, and growing communion between Catholics and Orthodox, which has been fostered through frequent contact, fraternal meetings, and promising theological dialogue. In light of the advances already made, significant steps have been taken at ecclesiological and canonical levels, and today we are called even more to commit ourselves to the restoration of full communion.
I want to mention something that I don't really hear anyone talking about this. And I have to give props actually to my Protestant pastor years ago when I was a Calvinist. Somehow he got a hold of these talks from a guy. I don't even remember the guy's name, but he was listening to Gary North, and Gary North recommended this guy. And it's a guy who explains that modern psychology and sociology is all sort of Hegelian, what he called diapraxis. And what that means is that there's an assumption that nobody has truth. But what we're all doing is sort of on a process journey to getting closer to, quote, truth. Okay, that's how this guy's lectures, this is like 20 years ago, this guy's lectures on diapraxis worked. And he argued that the problem was that modern psychology was all kind of based around this idea that there is no truth. Everybody's just sort of like dialoguing to come to some like gay synthesis or whatever, right? Well, that is Hegelianism. Hegelianism is based on the idea that everything is a process working itself out towards the omega point, which is when everything turns into like one big gay blob. Literally. This is where Huxley takes things in his book, Perennial Philosophy, for example. So guess what? The same thing with diapraxis, which is the dialogical process of coming to a synthesis. It's the opposite of being based in what's true. So you're not dialoguing and debating in ecumenism to figure out who was right or wrong. The assumption is everyone is wrong, the church is fractured, and we are all on a journey or a process towards truth. And perhaps in the eschaton, when we are all one, some approximation of the capital T truth will be achieved. So do you see how deceptive and silly this is? The entire ecumenist geopolitical project is built on this idea that nobody has the fullness of truth. In fact, do you remember Leo saying this actually a few weeks ago? Leo said, no one has the fullness of truth. Yeah, he said this not too long ago. Now all these people are leaving. You've been waiting for like 20 minutes. We're going to go to open calls. Why y'all leaving? I guarantee there ain't nothing else happening. This is what's happening right now. Shout out to, we got 1,100 in the chat. Welcome, everybody. Jesus set up a church. There's one true church. It's a historical church. It's not fractured, trying to find unity. When people leave it, they're no longer in it. And the Roman Catholic Church, until Vatican II, still had that mindset. It said anyone who didn't believe its dogmas was outside of it. It's taught in Satis Cognitum. It's taught in Mystici Corporis. It's taught in the Anathemas of Vatican I, which we just read. So the very argument that they're making, the ecumenists at the Vatican, that there is a true church, but also a fractured church of which everyone is in partial gradations of communion, itself proves that they're not the true church. Because they don't teach the ecclesiology prior to Vatican II. That's why Vatican II said the Roman Catholic, the church subsists in the Roman Catholic Church. Prior to that, it would have universally said the Roman Catholic Church is the true church. They would have taught extra ecclesiam nulla salus, like Cantate Domino knows, out of the Council of Florence. So the irony is that the Council of Florence was one of Roman Catholicism's strongest statements about the necessity of being in communion with the Roman bishop to be saved. Cantate Domino is the name of the document at Florence that says that. And yet the new Florence is premised on there not being one true church, but you must still be in the Roman Catholic Church because the Pope is now the head of all the world religions. That's the insidious, crazy level insanity of Vatican II. And that is why Vatican II doesn't just teach that theologically. It teaches it politically. What? Yes. The Fabian socialist teaching of Gaudium et Spes perfectly lines up with the geopolitical agenda of ecumenism. So I've been writing articles saying for so many years that ecumenism is not just a theological blindness, a lack of discernment, a lack of having an Orthodox phronema, a lack of having nepsis. It is also a geopolitical agenda, and that's what hardly anyone can fathom in this sphere. A lot of our people get it. And I'll be on with Cleve to Antiquity this week, by the way. We're going to do a stream just on the geopolitical implications of the ecumenist movement. But what's amazing is that some of the Roman Catholics themselves have written some of the best material on this. You've heard me say it for a million times, and here's the 1,000,001th time. John Courtney Murray, Time Life Magazine, The American Proposition, the CIA's doctrinal warfare program that changed the Catholic Church. This is a crucial element in this story, in understanding ecumenism in Vatican II. That's why you cannot understand what's happening with the EP and Rome without understanding the geopolitical side of it. And it's not even people within the traditional Catholic world like David Wimhoff that wrote that gigantic, massive, excellent tome. It's also people in the normie academic world that write on this. It's not even controversial. Now, to all the dum-dums that call me tinfoil hat and all this kind of stuff, they don't know anything about this stuff. They're not in the world of academia. They've never been in it. I'm not in it. I was in it, though. When you're in the world of academia, you get access to papers, journals, books, etc. You come across things that the normies don't read. So what sounds insane to normies is common parlance in the academic world, such as Michael Graziano's book, Aaron into the Wilderness, Religion and the History of the CIA. If you were to read this book, you would come away thinking, well, duh, of course the State Department has an intense interest and concern in what happens in the Orthodox Church or in the Roman Catholic Church. Duh, it's part of soft power. But to the normies out here, they don't even know anything about that. That sounds crazy to them. But let's get back to Papa Leo. By the way, popping Leos, as I said, that sounds like a drug. We got a lot of people popping Leos. Maybe that's why they're turning gay. Stop popping Leos. They're making you gay.
In this regard, I wish to express my deep gratitude to His All Holiness and the Ecumenical Patriarchate for their ongoing support for the Joint International Commission for Theological Dialogue between the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. I also hope that every effort will be made to ensure that all the autocephalous Orthodox churches return to take an active part in this endeavor. For my part...
Interesting admission. All the autocephalous churches. Isn't that funny that recently we had quite a few debates where Roman Catholics had never heard of this. And they said this is made up. But it turns out you could just look up on Tardopedia. What is autocephaly? What is autocephaly? Oh, turns out the Council of Ephesus ratified the autocephaly of the Church of Cyprus. So, do you believe in the Council of Ephesus, Roman Catholics? Well, I guess if you're voice of Sleason, you don't, because he said the Council of Ephesus made an error. The Council of Ephesus made an error because he said that you can't talk about biting plump booties. But actually you can. It's in the apostolic deposit. The papacy has confirmed that you can bite plump booties. Look at that. The council ratified autocephaly. Roman Catholics have never even heard of this. What? What's that? And now here is Leo mentioning it, talking about it.
In continuity with the teaching of the Second Vatican Council and my predecessors, I wish to confirm that while respecting legitimate differences, the pursuit of full communion among all those baptized in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.
I have a question. How do we determine what the percentage and gradation of communion actually is, right? So, we're going to say the Muslims are in 20% communion with the Roman See. The Orthodox are in 80% communion with the Roman. How do you determine the percentage, right? What's the actual algorithm? Right? But we get Cameron from Cucking Christianity to come on here and give us the Bayesian model for how you determine the actual percentage. By the way, there are enough spurgs in this domain that they will actually try to figure out a moral calculus algorithm to figure out how you know the percentage of what communion they're in with us. That's how silly these people are. Now, in the first 1,000 years of Christianity, as we just said, where is there any notion of percentages and gradations of communion? You're either in communion or you're out. Now, yeah, there's schisms amongst the patriarchates, but how does that translate into Francis's Fratelli Tutti, where he gives prayers for non-denominational Christians and prayers that Unitarians can do? Remember that? He wrote an encyclical where he was like, oh, by the way, if you're a Unitarian, you can pray this prayer with us. If you're a non-denominational Christian, you can pray this prayer. It's safe. It won't hurt your conscience in all of the things that you reject. So this whole idea of being 20% Christian, 80% Christian, 30% Orthodox, 50%, 70, 90%, or it's all nonsense. And I can prove it by the fact that Satis Cognitum and Mystici Corporis, and there's one more from Pius XII, I forget the name of it, but they teach very clearly that if you reject one dogma, you're out of the church. That's the classical Roman Catholic ecclesial model. That's Cantate Domino from Florence. If you're out of communion with the Bishop of Rome, you're not saved. Do we need to read this again to see how vastly different the ecclesiology of Florence is from Vatican II and Francis and Leo and John Paul II? I mean, it's famous, right? Cantate Domino. I'm not going to read the Reddit one because he's making it up. He's reading off of Reddit. Okay, here you go. The most holy Roman Church believes, professes, and preaches that none of those outside of it, not only pagans, but Jews and heretics and schismatics. Well, to be a Jew, to be a heretic and a schismatic requires some degree of self-conscious knowledge. We're going to bring Tim up, our good buddy, in a second. We'll go to Tim, and then we'll go to FDA and others. But I'm bringing up Cantate Domino just to point out the fact that heretics and schismatics are classically seen as not part of the body. Now, when we get to this new ecclesiology, which is what we would reject, but what Leo and Bartholomew agree to, the idea is now that everybody's just sort of accidentally in communion with like we're all accidentally in communion. Like you can actually be like Scientologists perhaps, and maybe 20% in communion. So it's no longer the older model of in or out. It's gradations, and we're seeking for levels of union. Now, I'm inviting Tim to come chat. We're not going to have a debate. I just want Tim to come on and chat about some of the insights that he's had. I want to get his take on this push for this union. I want to get his take on some of the things happening in the Catholic apologetics world, particularly, again, this real struggle, and this happens in the Orthodox world too, by the way, between proper male-female relationships and the push to get women in the religious world on some sort of like equal footing with the men. Now, remember, this is happening again in Orthodoxy and Catholicism, that there's a push to study the role of the deaconess, and maybe we need to revive the, this missing, forgotten role of the deaconess. And then as we all know, that's the slippery slope that then prepares the way for, well, if we got to have a deaconess, we can have a female priest. Well, if we have a female priest, we have a female bishop. This is the slippery slope that the Episcopal Anglican road took. They went down this route. So I want to get some of Tim's takes on that. And then first and foremost, one of the things that Tim really hit me to that I thought was a great, people in the chat are saying to ask Tim about shameless popery. We are going to, don't worry. I want to ask him about, he said, Peronism. I said, what's Peronism? Well, it's the perfect description of this sort of bureaucracy speak that both the EP and the Vatican do to soften people up and sort of go forward or walk it back. Tim, could you explain Peronism and what exactly that bureaucratic model is? Then we'll get into some of your takes on some of these other issues. And also want to tell everybody that Tim will be doing a stream, I think today, responding to some of the positions out there that he's going to refute.
Yo, what's up, Jay?
Hey,
Thanks
man.
for inviting me on. How are you doing?
Doing great.